The thing that makes DC great isn't so much its main heroes as it is the incredible depth of its less popular characters. Weird creations from the 1940s and 50s and 60s have taken on a lot of character and aged like fine wines into the aughts and 20-teens. So if you've been following The Flash, you know that one of those side characters, the Shade, is back in Central City. But who is he? What is he and what does he do? The Shade is one of my favorite characters for a lot of reasons and should be one of yours. Hi, I'm Dan Unthan. Let's talk about the Shade. The Shade is called the Shade because that's almost all he throws. He's able to manipulate shadows, British snark, and darkness as weapons, disguises, shields, and even quasi-living soldiers. Basically anything that a Green Lantern can do with green light, he can do with darkness and then some. He's like a cranky reverse light bulb with a British accent. The Shade was originally a Gardner-Fox creation from the 1940s, but came into his own when James Robinson retconned his origin in the early 1990s in Starman. An Englishman in the early 19th century, he had an accidental encounter with some sort of arcane living darkness, and then it fused with him, and also a dwarf, but that's not really important right now. And it erased his memories, but gave him shadow powers, and also made him immortal. The Shade spent most of his days as a villain, made more wicked by the shadow powers that he had, which came from a dimension that was so evil not even Lucifer, Azazel, or Beelzebub would actually go there. But by the time he made his way to Opal City in the mid-1990s, he was largely reformed, but still pretty comfortable with killing. Mostly because he had removed the dwarf that had infected him, and you know what, really, never mind, actually. Anyway, he was an anti-hero, like Deadpool, but Jonathan Pryce. And nothing like Deadpool at all. Imagine like a really angry Doctor Who, who's kind of metal. Imagine if somebody put Doctor Who and Nine Inch Nails in a blender. Kind of like a goth Doctor Who. Here's why I love the shit out of the Shade. The dude wears specs and a top hat like he's Gary Oldman in Dracula, but with cooler powers. He's based off of Richard Smith from the Dickens novella, The Old Curiosity Shop. He's pretty much invincible, he walks with a cane, he's beaten the Flash, Dr. Fate thinks he could possibly take on the Spectre, who's basically the vengeful hand of God in DC, and yes, God is a character in DC Comics. One time the Shade got his heart ripped out by a Black Lantern and just walked it off. In one other possible future, the Shade's powers grow out of control and envelop an entire sector of United Planet's space. And still later, find him living in a planet made entirely of Starman's cosmic rod technology. Imagine, a planet made entirely out of one guy's rod. The future! Part of what reformed him was the love of Hope O'Dare, the great-granddaughter of a sheriff that rivaled him in the early days of Opal City. But in the most recent issues of The Flash, Hope has been pulled into the Shadowlands, the dimensional source of the power that the Shade draws from. And she's become corrupted by that, in the same way that the Shade originally was. And she's made herself the queen of the Shadowlands. I love the character more than a lot of DC creations, which is saying a lot, but mostly because he feels like a Vertigo character and a Golden Age character had sex. I even made my own Shade custom action figure, which is maybe one of the saddest and dorkiest things that I've ever done. But that's how much I love the character. Anyway, a version of him appeared in The Flash, but went out like some kind of punk because the comic Shade wouldn't get beaten by somebody shining a light on him. Anyway, I'm glad he's back in comics. Now, if they would just get James Robinson back and actually put him on a DC solo series, that'd be fantastic. You should check The Flash out. Thanks. See you next time.